The night was dark and heavy with mist. The sky above was broken by strange lights that burned across the atmosphere. David, a lone human explorer, had crashed far from his base, his small ship torn open like paper when it struck the alien forest. The air smelled damp and full of life. The ground was thick with glowing plants that moved as if they were alive. David staggered forward, his arm bruised, his leg aching from the fall. He could barely breathe, but he forced himself to move. Every shadow in the forest felt like it was watching him. Every rustle of leaves sent a shiver through his spine. He had been trained to survive, but this place was not Earth. It was something else entirely. As he walked, he heard it, a sound that made his heart freeze. It was laughter, but not human laughter. It was light, soft, and musical, like a melody carried by the wind. David turned quickly, scanning the glowing trees. His voice cracked when he whispered, "Who's there?" But no answer came, only the sound of that strange laughter again, closer this time. Then, from behind a cluster of trees, she appeared, a girl, but not a human girl. She was alien, yet strangely beautiful. Her skin shimmered faintly with silver patterns that glowed in the dark. Her eyes were bright, glowing like two moons. Her hair floated lightly as if the air itself loved her. She was small, delicate, yet there was something wild in the way she moved. She tilted her head, watching David, then stepped closer with slow, curious movements. David raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. "I don't want trouble," he said carefully, but the girl only smiled, her sharp teeth flashing in the dim light. Before David could react, she darted forward with sudden speed. She circled him, giggling softly. Her movements were quick, animal-like. Her eyes never left him. Then without warning, she leaned in and bit his arm. Not hard, but enough to make him yelp. "Ouch!" he cried, pulling back, staring at her in shock. But the girl only laughed again, as if she had done something playful. Her eyes sparkled, and she touched the mark with her finger, almost proud of what she had done. David's heart raced. He had no idea what it meant. Was it a threat? Was it a game? Or was it something much deeper? The girl moved closer again, sniffing the air near him like a curious animal. David took a step back, his body tense. He had faced danger before, but never something like this. There was no weapon in her hand, no aggression in her posture, and yet the bite burned on his skin, leaving a strange warmth behind. For a moment, they stared at each other in silence. David's breath was heavy, the girl's smile wide and strange. Then from the shadows above, David noticed glowing eyes, others watching. He realized quickly he was not alone with her. Her people were hiding, watching his reaction, studying him. The alien girl seemed to sense his fear. She stepped forward, her hand brushing his wrist, and then she giggled again, circling him like a playful predator. David's instincts screamed at him to run, but something in her eyes told him to stay. The forest itself seemed to grow quieter, the mist curling between them. The girl leaned close once more, whispering something in her language, words David could not understand, but her tone was soft, almost gentle. Her fangs brushed against his skin again, and he flinched, but this time she only smiled, leaving him even more confused. David whispered to himself, "What are you?" His voice was trembling, not only from fear but from the mystery before him. The girl pulled back, her glowing eyes locked on his, and for a brief second, David thought he saw something human in her expression, curiosity, trust, maybe even hope. But then she turned her head sharply as if hearing something in the forest. She hissed softly, her playful smile fading. For the first time, David saw tension on her face. The forest growled with a deep, distant sound. Something large was moving in the dark. The girl grabbed his wrist suddenly, her grip surprisingly strong, and she pulled him back into the trees. David stumbled after her, his body aching, his mind racing with questions. Why had she bitten him? Why did her people watch in silence? And what danger was now coming for them both? As the sound of heavy footsteps grew closer, David realized this was only the beginning of something far larger than he could ever imagine. The bite, the girl, the strange warmth spreading in his arm, all of it was connected, and all of it was pulling him into a story he could not escape. The forest closed in around them, glowing plants lighting their path. The alien girl's grip never loosened, and though he barely understood her, David knew one thing. Whatever was coming, she had marked him, and nothing in his life would ever be the same again. David stumbled through the forest, dragged by the alien girl's small but strong hand. His breath came fast, his chest rising and falling with fear. The heavy footsteps behind them faded into the mist, but he knew something dangerous had been close. The girl finally stopped, pulling him into a hollow between two giant glowing roots. She crouched low, her glowing eyes fixed on him. For a moment, neither spoke. David touched the mark on his arm where her teeth had grazed him. The skin was warm, almost burning, and every time he pressed it, the warmth spread through his body. His mind swirled with confusion. Why would she bite him? What did it mean? The girl tilted her head, watching him carefully. She placed her finger gently on the mark, then tapped her own chest. Her lips moved with soft words he could not understand, but her expression was clear. She was trying to explain. David shook his head, frustrated. I don't get it, he whispered. She only smiled with her sharp teeth flashing again. She moved closer, sniffing at his shoulder like a curious animal. Then she giggled, leaning forward and biting him again, softer this time. David flinched, yelping, ouch. Not again. But the strange warmth returned, stronger, pulsing through him like a heartbeat. His knees weakened for a second, and he gripped the tree root to stay upright. The girl clapped her hands lightly, as if she was pleased. She spoke again in her musical voice, pointing to him, then pointing to the forest, then pointing back to herself. David frowned, trying to piece the meaning together. Was she marking him as hers? Was it a signal to her people? Or was it something much deeper, something ancient? The forest whispered around them, glowing insects floating like tiny stars. David sat down against the root, exhausted. He muttered to himself, what am I to you? But the girl only crouched beside him, smiling. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the sound of creatures moving far away. David tried to rest, but every time his eyes closed, he felt that strange warmth from the bite stirring inside him. It wasn't pain, not exactly, it was energy, alive, restless, as if her touch had woken something inside his blood. When the dawn finally broke, soft pale light spilling through the alien canopy, David realized she had not left his side. She was sitting cross-legged near him, her glowing eyes half closed but never turning away. He rubbed his arm again and sighed. I guess you're not letting me go, huh? The girl tilted her head, giggled, and bit her own wrist lightly, then pointed at him. The message was clear. Whatever she had done to him, she had done to herself as well. A bond, a link, a thread tying them together. David's stomach twisted. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't wanted this. But deep inside, a voice whispered that it might save him. By midday, the girl led him to the edge of a clearing. David froze when he saw them, shadows moving in the trees, dozens of glowing eyes watching. It was her people, silent, cautious. Their forms were similar to hers, tall and slender, with glowing patterns across their skin. They whispered to each other in hushed tones, their eyes fixed on David's arm. The girl tugged his hand and pulled him into the open. David's throat went dry as the whispers grew louder. Some of the aliens looked angry, others surprised. A tall figure stepped forward, an elder, his silver hair falling across his shoulders. He stared at the mark on David's arm, his face tight with disbelief. The girl spoke quickly, pointing at David, showing the bite mark with pride. The elder's expression darkened. He raised his staff and shouted something harsh. The crowd erupted, some hissing, some gasping in shock. David's heart pounded. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the reaction. Whatever the bite meant, it was no small thing. The girl stepped in front of David, her arms outstretched as if shielding him. She shouted back at the elder, her small body trembling but her voice fierce. David couldn't believe it. She was protecting him from her own people. The elder slammed his staff into the ground. The forest seemed to shake with the sound. He pointed at David, then at the sky, then at the girl. His voice was filled with warning. The others murmured, some nodding, others shaking their heads. David swallowed hard. He whispered, this isn't good. His hand went to the mark again, and for the first time he wondered if the bite had cursed him or blessed him. The girl looked back at him, her glowing eyes filled with determination. She reached for his hand and squeezed it tightly. Her bite had not been a game, not a joke. It was a bond, one that tied his fate to hers. The whispers of the tribe grew louder, the tension heavier. David stood frozen, feeling the weight of every stare. The girl leaned close, whispering words he still could not understand, but he knew EIR meaning all the same, she had chosen him, and there was no going back. As the sun dipped lower, the elder raised his staff once more, his voice thundered through the clearing, and all fell silent. David felt the air grow colder, the eyes of the tribe sharper, the bite on his arm burned like fire, reminding him that nothing would ever be the same. David stood frozen in the clearing, surrounded by glowing eyes. The alien tribe formed a circle around him, their tall figures blending with the glowing plants of the forest. Their whispers felt sharp, like knives in the air. Some hissed with anger, others gasped with disbelief, but all stared at the mark on his arm. The girl stayed close to him, her small hand gripping his wrist. Her glowing patterns shimmered brighter, as if she was ready to fight them all. She shouted at the elder again, her voice sharp and defiant. David could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. She was standing against her own people. The elder raised his staff, silencing the crowd. He stepped closer, his glowing eyes locked on David. With one swift motion, he reached out and grabbed David's arm, pulling it up for all to see. The bite mark was red and bright, pulsing faintly as if alive. The tribe gasped, some stepping back in fear. The elder muttered something low and grave. His face was tight with anger. He pointed to David, then to the sky, then to the girl. His words rumbled with warning. The tribe broke into louder whispers, some pointing at David with disgust, others with awe. David's stomach tightened. He whispered under his breath, "What's happening to me?" The warmth of the bite spread again, crawling through his veins, making his heart pound faster. It was like the mark was alive, responding to their voices. The girl pulled his arm back and hissed at the elder, baring her sharp teeth. The elder slammed his staff into the ground, and two guards stepped forward, tall and strong. Their glowing patterns burned brighter. They reached for David, but the girl blocked them. Her small body stood firm, her eyes blazing with fire. She shouted a single word, sharp and loud. The guards froze, confused, and looked to the elder for guidance. David realized then that she had some kind of power, not only over him but over her people too. They feared her, or maybe they feared what the bite meant. He looked at her, his voice shaky. "Why me? Why did you do this?" She turned to him, touched the mark on his arm, then touched her own chest. Her glowing eyes softened, and she whispered something gentle. The meaning was clear enough. She had chosen him. The elder barked another command, and the guards stepped back, but the tension did not fade. David could feel the weight of every stare pressing down on him. He was not welcome here, but he was not being killed either. Something about the mark had stopped them. The tribe moved as one, parting the circle. They led David and the girl deeper into the forest. Their path was lit by glowing plants that pulsed like beating hearts. Strange creatures with crystal wings flew overhead, their songs echoing softly. David's legs shook with every step. He was exhausted, but fear kept him moving. They reached a vast hollow beneath a giant tree, its roots twisting high like walls. Inside, glowing fires burned with blue flames, and the air was thick with smoke. The tribe gathered in silence, their glowing patterns flickering like stars. At the center stood a stone altar carved with symbols. The elder pointed at the altar, then at David. His voice was heavy with command. David shook his head, whispering, "No, no, I don't want this." But the guards pushed him forward. The girl darted ahead, standing between David and the altar, shouting and defiance. The crowd hissed and whispered, tension building like a storm. David felt trapped. His hands shook, his heart pounded. The warmth in his arm flared again, burning hotter. He looked at the mark, shocked to see faint glowing lines spreading from it across his skin. He gasped, "What's happening to me?" The tribe saw it too, and their whispers turned to cries. Some shouted warnings, others knelt in fear. The elder's face grew pale, his staff trembled in his grip. David stumbled back, staring at his own arm, the glowing lines pulsing with each beat of his heart. The girl rushed to him, grabbing his shoulders, her eyes locked onto his, and she spoke quickly, her voice urgent. David couldn't understand the words, but her tone was clear. She wanted him to stay calm. She pressed her forehead against his, and for a moment, the warmth eased. The elder finally raised his staff high, his voice booming across the hollow. The tribe fell silent, every glowing eye fixed on David. The elder's words rolled like thunder. He pointed at David and declared something final. The crowd erupted again, half shouting in anger, half bowing their heads. David looked around, panic rising. He turned to the girl, desperate. What did he say? What's going on? She held his hand tightly, her grip firm, her glowing eyes softened, and she whispered a single word, one he somehow understood even without knowing the language, chosen. The word struck him like lightning. He stumbled back, shaking his head. No, no, I didn't ask for this. But the mark on his arm burned hotter, glowing brighter. The girl leaned against him, her eyes never leaving his. The tribe's whispers filled the hollow, their fear and awe mixing like fire and smoke. David's heart thundered. His body trembled. He had come here by accident, but now he was caught in something sacred, something dangerous, something he didn't understand. The bite was no longer just a playful act, it was a claim, a bond, a mark of destiny, and whether he wanted it or not, David was now bound to the hidden tribe. The tribe gasped, their eyes wide. They had seen what no outsider should be able to do. David had struck the beast, when even their strongest had failed. The elder's face twisted with shock and fear, his staff lowered, trembling. The girl rushed to David's side, her small hands pressed against his wounds. She whispered urgently, then bit his arm again, softer. Her bite spread another wave of fire through him, healing his strength. He coughed, his breath ragged, but he rose once more. The beast roared, tearing through the hollow, but now David felt no fear. The fire in his veins drowned it. He picked up another weapon, a shard of broken crystal, and faced the creature again. His voice was hoarse, but he shouted anyway, "Come on." The girl stood at his side, her glowing patterns blazing brighter than ever. Together, they charged. The battle was fierce, the beast thrashing and roaring, but David's strikes landed again and again, guided by the strange bond between him and the girl. Each time he weakened, she bit him, renewing his fire. Each time he faltered, her hand steadied him. Finally, with one last strike, David drove the crystal shard deep into the beast's neck. The monster screamed, then collapsed, the ground shaking beneath its weight. The forest fell silent, the blue flames flickering low. David stood panting, his body trembling, the fire in his veins dimmed, leaving only exhaustion. He dropped the shard and fell to his knees. The girl rushed to him, wrapping her arms around him, whispering softly. Her bite mark still glowed faintly, but now it was joined by the whispers of the tribe. They stared at him not with hatred now, but with fear and wonder. Some bowed their heads, others stepped back. The elder's face was pale, his staff shaking in his grip. David met his eyes, his voice low and broken. "What did you do to me?" The girl smiled faintly, her sharp teeth gleaming. She pressed her forehead against his, whispering a single word again, "Chosen." David shivered. The consequences of that single playful bite had changed everything. He was no longer just a human in the wrong place, he was something more, something dangerous, something tied to their destiny, and the tribe knew it. The hollow was silent except for the heavy breaths of David and the crackle of fading blue flames. The massive beast lay still, its body broken, its red eyes dimming into the darkness. Around them, the alien tribe gathered, their glowing patterns flickering with awe and fear. David's hands shook as he pressed them to the ground, his chest heaved, sweat running down his face, his body felt drained, yet the bite's fire still lingered faintly inside him. The girl knelt beside him, her arms wrapped around his shoulders, whispering softly in her language. Her touch was gentle, but her eyes burned with pride. The elder stepped forward slowly, his staff trembling. He studied the dead beast, then turned his glowing eyes to David. The whispers of the tribe grew louder, some voices sharp with anger, others hushed with reverence. The elder lifted his staff, pointing at David, his voice boomed through the hollow, full of warning and command. David could not understand the words, but the meaning pressed against him like a weight. They did not know whether to worship him or destroy him. He had done what their strongest warriors had failed to do, and that made him both dangerous and necessary. The girl pulled David closer, standing tall in front of him. Her glowing patterns shone brighter than ever. She shouted back at the elder, her voice sharp with defiance. She pointed at the beast's corpse, then at David. Her message was clear. He had saved them. He was not their enemy. The tribe erupted into louder whispers, some nodding, some shaking their heads. A woman in the crowd cried out in anger, pointing at David's bite mark. She spat words like venom, and others joined her cry. Soon half the tribe was demanding he be cast out, while the other half stood frozen, unsure. The elder slammed his staff into the ground, silencing them. He stared at David with heavy eyes, then lowered high his head as if in thought. Finally, he gestured for two warriors to approach. They moved carefully, not with weapons raised, but with solemn faces. They motioned for David and the girl to follow. The girl hissed softly, but David touched her arm, shaking his head. He whispered, "It's okay, maybe they just want to talk." Though his voice shook, his curiosity burned. He wanted answers. About the bite, about the fire, about why she had chosen him. They followed the warriors deeper into the forest, away from the hollow. The path was lined with glowing flowers that lit their way. Strange animals moved in the branches above, their eyes watching silently. David stumbled often, his body aching, but the girl never let go of his hand. At last, they reached a cavern carved into the side of a mountain root. Inside, the walls shimmered with glowing veins of crystal. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of moss. The warriors bowed and left them there, the sound of their footsteps fading into the mist. The elder appeared once more, stepping slowly into the cavern. He placed his staff against the wall and lowered himself onto a stone seat. His eyes studied David with the weight of years. The girl stood tall, her body tense, ready to fight again. The elder spoke in a calmer voice now, slow and deliberate. He pointed to the mark on David's arm, then traced a symbol on the ground with his finger. It looked like a spiral, glowing faintly in the dim light. He spoke a word, repeating it slowly. The girl frowned, then turned to David, whispering something softly. David didn't understand the word itself, but he understood her tone. It was the name of the bond. The bite was not only a ritual, it was an ancient mark of protection and unity, the chosen protector of the tribe, bound by blood. David's throat tightened. He whispered, "Protector." The girl nodded, her glowing eyes softening. She pressed her hand to his chest and repeated the word, "Protector." The elder's gaze darkened as he spoke again, this time sharper. He gestured to the beast's corpse outside. Then back to David. His voice was full of warning. The girl's eyes narrowed. She shook her head fiercely, arguing with him. David could only watch, confused and anxious. His chest tightened with the weight of their words. Finally, the elder fell silent. His eyes burned with sadness as he lifted his staff and drew another symbol on the ground. This time it was a jagged line, a warning of danger. The girl's face paled. She looked at David with trembling lips, her hand squeezed his tightly. She whispered a single word, one he finally understood, "Enemy." David's blood ran cold. The beast had not been the only threat. More were coming, stronger, hungrier. The forest was filled with predators that even the tribe feared, and now, with the bite burning in his veins, he had been dragged into their fight. The girl pressed her forehead against his, whispering fast. Her voice was full of urgency, though he could not catch every meaning. He understood one thing: she had chosen him not just out of play, but because she believed he could protect them. The elder rose, his staff striking the ground once more. His voice carried heavy sorrow, but also acceptance. He pointed at David, then at the girl, then at the cavern walls where the glowing crystals pulsed like hearts. His final words echoed through the cavern. The girl's eyes shimmered with tears. She turned to David and whispered the translation in broken, halting words, her voice trembling. "Together, or die." David's chest ached. He looked at the bite mark, glowing faintly, the fire inside him burning warmer with each heartbeat. The alien girl clung to him, her sharp teeth biting her lip as if she feared his answer. He whispered back, his voice hoarse, "I didn't ask for this." But when her glowing eyes filled with sorrow, he added, "But I'm not leaving you." The fire in his veins flared, answering his words, the bond W. As real, stronger than fear. David didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one truth. His life was no longer his alone. The cavern walls glowed faintly, the crystals pulsing like quiet hearts. David sat against the cold stone, his chest rising and falling in heavy breaths. The girl remained close beside him, her hand gripping his, her glowing patterns dimming and brightening with every beat. She never let go, not even for a moment. He stared at the bite mark on his arm, still glowing softly. The warmth from it had not faded, instead, it had spread deeper, into his chest, into his bones. He could feel it moving through him like fire that refused to die. His voice was low as he muttered, "What are you doing to me?" The girl tilted her head, her glowing eyes soft. She touched the mark gently with her fingertip, then touched her own chest. Her lips moved, speaking her language in a soft whisper. David could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. She was tied to him, and he was tied to her. The bond was not only blood, it was life. David leaned back, trying to process everything. He was a stranger in this world, lost, broken, alone, yet here was this alien girl who had chosen him, marked him, and bound him to her people. He felt both trapped and strangely protected. The fear inside him twisted with something else, something dangerously close to trust. The elder returned, his staff striking the cavern floor. His face was grave, his glowing eyes fixed on David. He spoke slowly, his voice heavy. The girl answered in sharp tones, her body tense. The elder gestured at the crystals, then at David's arm. He was explaining something important. David tried to follow. His eyes went to the crystals in the wall. They pulsed with faint light, almost in rhythm with his heartbeat. When he raised his arm, the mark glowed brighter, and the crystals answered, shimmering more strongly. His chest tightened. He whispered, "It's connected." The girl nodded quickly, as if she understood his words. She smiled faintly, touching his chest again. The elder's face darkened. He raised his staff and drew another symbol in the dust, a circle, broken by cracks. His voice rumbled like thunder, warning of something fragile, something that could shatter. The girl shook her head fiercely, shouting back at him. She pointed to David, then bit her own wrist and showed the mark of her teeth. The elder's expression shifted, sadness mixing with fear. He spoke again, but his voice had softened. David looked between them, confused. His patience broke. His voice rose, trembling. "Enough. I can't understand you. What does it mean? What am I?" The girl turned to him, her glowing eyes wide, her lips trembled. She whispered slowly, in broken words, her accent heavy but clear enough, "You, my bond, my protector, my life." The word struck David harder than any blow. He froze, staring at her. His throat felt dry. She had given him more than a mark. She had given him herself, her trust, her life, her everything. David's chest ached. His voice softened. "Why me?" The girl did not answer with words this time. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. Her glowing patterns flared bright, wrapping them both in a soft light. He felt the warmth of her bond spreading stronger, tying him tighter to her. The fire inside him burned steadier, no longer wild but alive with purpose. The elder sighed deeply, his staff lowered, his glowing eyes dimmed with acceptance. He turned and left the cavern, leaving them alone. David sat in silence, the girl resting against his shoulder. The warmth of the bond was no longer frightening. It was strange, yes, but it carried a comfort he had not felt in years. On Earth, he had been nothing, a wanderer, forgotten and alone. But here, on this alien world, someone needed him. The girl whispered again, practicing the human word, "protector." Her voice was soft, shy, almost playful. She bit his arm lightly once more, not to hurt but to renew the bond. David winced, but then laughed softly, the sound surprising even him. "Yeah," he muttered, "protector." The cavern shook suddenly, dust falling from the ceiling. David tensed, his hand gripping the girl's instinctively. From outside came the sound of shouts, the voices of the tribe raised in alarm. Then came the growl, low, deep, and terrible. Another beast had come, larger than the last. David rose to his feet, his body aching but the fire burning steady. The girl clung to his arm, her eyes wide with fear. He looked at her, his voice low, steady. "We'll fight together." She nodded, her small hand gripping his tightly. Her glowing patterns flared bright again. Her teeth grazed his skin lightly, sparking another wave of strength through his veins. The bond surged alive, and David felt unstoppable. They ran out of the cavern, into the night filled with fire and fear. The tribe scattered, their glowing eyes darting through the darkness. The beast towered above them, larger, darker, its roar shaking the trees. David's chest tightened, but the girl's grip steadied him. The elder's voice boomed across the clearing, calling for warriors, calling for courage. But all eyes turned to David and the girl, the protector and the bonded. They were no longer strangers, no longer alone. They were one. The beast roared, the ground split, and David stepped forward, fire blazing in his veins. The girl's voice rose beside him, a cry of defiance. "Ce, together." They faced the darkness, bound by a bite that had changed everything. The night was alive with fear. The second beast towered over the tribe, its scales darker, its eyes brighter red than the first. Its roar shook the forest, sending flocks of glowing birds into the sky. The ground cracked as its claws sank deep into the roots of the great tree. David stood before it, the alien girl clinging to his side. Her glowing patterns burned like fire, her eyes filled with fear but also determination. The tribe scattered around them, some raising weapons, others falling to their knees. The elders shouted commands, but the people's eyes were not on him, they were on David, the outsider, the marked, the chosen. The fire of the bite pulsed in David's veins, but his body trembled with exhaustion. He had already fought once, already bled. The warmth inside him surged again only when the girl bit his arm lightly, renewing the strange strength. He gasped as it spread through him, steady and powerful. The beast lowered its head, its breath hot and foul, its eyes locked on David as if it could see the fire inside him. It roared and charged, the ground shaking with each step. David gritted his teeth and raised a broken spear. His chest burned, but he did not back away. The girl's voice rang out, sharp and musical. She cried in her language, her tone full of command. Her people froze, listening. Her patterns glowed brighter, and David realized she was no longer just a girl. She was something greater, someone born to lead. The beast swung its claws. David leaped aside, the fire guiding his movements. He thrust the spear toward its eye, but the shaft snapped against its hard scales. The beast roared, turning on him. David rolled, the girl pulling him to his feet. Her teeth grazed his shoulder again, and another wave of strength filled him. He whispered through clenched teeth, "I can't do this alone." The girl's glowing eyes locked onto his, and she whispered a single word, broken but clear. Together, David felt the bond burn hotter, his veins lit with fire, his skin glowed faintly, mirroring her patterns. For the first time, he felt not human, not alien, but something in between, something new. The tribe gasped, their voices rising in awe. The elder's eyes widened as he saw the glow spread across David's chest. The bond was complete, stronger than any they had seen before. The beast roared again, swinging its massive tail. David caught it with both hands, his muscles screaming. His feet dug into the earth, and with the girl pressing her small hands against his back, the fire surged. Together they forced the beast back, their voices rising in a cry of defiance. The tribe rallied, their courage lit by what they saw. Spears rose, voices shouted. Together they swarmed the beast, David at the front, his fire guiding their every strike. The girl never left his side, each bite renewing his strength, each touch steadying his will. The battle raged, the ground split, the air filled with fire and screams, but slowly, the beast weakened. David climbed its massive form, his hands glowing, his chest burning with power. With one final cry, he drove a shard of crystal into its skull. The beast let out a last roar and fell, the ground trembling with its death. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. The tribe stood frozen, staring at David. His body glowed faintly still, his arm wrapped in the girl's embrace. Her eyes shone with tears and triumph. The elder stepped forward slowly, his staff lowered, his face no longer angry, but solemn. He bowed his head, and the tribe followed. One by one, they lowered their weapons, their glowing patterns dimming in respect. David fell to his knees, gasping. His strength faded now that the fire had calmed. The girl wrapped her arms around him, holding him close. Her voice was soft as she whispered in her broken words, "Protector, you stay." David looked at her, his chest heavy with emotion. He remembered Earth, remembered his lonely days, his broken life, the emptiness that had followed him across the stars. And now here he was, in a strange world, with a girl who had chosen him, who had bound her life to his. The elder spoke again, his voice steady. He pointed to David, then to the girl, then raised his staff toward the sky. His words carried through the night. The girl translated softly, her eyes shimmering with tears. He say, "Your choice, stay with us, or go." David's throat tightened, the weight of the moment pressed down on him. If he stayed, he would never return home, he would never see Earth again, but he would not be alone. The girl's hand tightened on his, her eyes pleading, her teeth grazed her lip, as if afraid he would walk away. David closed his eyes, the silence stretched, the tribe waited, The forest held its breath, the fire inside him pulsed faintly, reminding him that he was no longer the man he once was. He opened his eyes and met the girl's gaze. "I say," he whispered, his voice trembling. "But sure," the girl cried out in joy, her arms wrapping around him tightly, her glowing patterns flared bright. The tribe bowed deeper, their voices rising in chants. The elder nodded slowly, his face finally soft with acceptance. David looked at the bite mark one last time, the symbol of everything that had changed. What had started as a playful bite had become his destiny. He was no longer just a human lost in the stars, he was chosen, protector, bonded. And as the girl pressed her forehead against his, whispering softly, David knew his choice was final. His life was no longer his alone. It belonged to her, to the tribe, and to the fire of the bond that would never fade.